Good morning, and it's great to be with, if I can call you all, social sector Avengers. Really glad to be here and hear about the amazing, I think, conversations and learning sharing that's happened over the last 2 days. And we're really looking forward to, of course, continuing that today. We have a short session, but I think post the session, we would love to engage with as many of you as possible. Just to quickly introduce ourselves, I am Aditi. I'm a manager with the Britspan Group, and I'm joined by my colleague Shashank Rastogi, who's a partner with the Britspan Group. Britspan is a global nonprofit organization. We work with mission-driven leaders, organizations, as well as philanthropies to really help them advance their missions to tackle complex social problems that are facing our sector, facing our communities, and really improve the quality of life of those who we serve. We do this through four key pillars, which includes providing strategic advisory services, providing capacity strengthening to nonprofits, as well as really building knowledge for the sector so that all that we learn, all the insights we gain, we're able to share them with all of you to drive each of your missions as we move forward towards creating larger social impact. So that's a little bit about ourselves. If we can please go to the next slide. So that's a little bit about ourselves, which I shared with you all. We are a global organization, so we have offices in India, South Africa, Singapore, and the US. Um, and as I said, one of the key pillars of our work is knowledge building, and that's where Pay What It Takes sort of also falls. As Nagma rightly put it, it's a collaborative initiative which we embarked on in 2020 with our champions, including the Edel Gift Foundation, A.T. Chandra Foundation, SIF, Ford Foundation, Forbes Marshall, and the Gates Foundation, to really solve this prevalent challenge of the chronic underfunding that NGOs face when it comes to non-programmatic costs, whether that be investing in organizational development, building a financially resilient organization, or even organizations that fall in non-metro cities are not getting adequate funding. We're looking to collectively take action as a sector to ensure that, nonprofits get the funding they require for their true costs. And when I say true costs, it's really looking at a comprehensive state of what it requires for you to drive those programs, drive a strong organization, and continue to grow and sustain it over the longer term. So our initiative engaged with, as Nagma said, hundreds of organizations, and if I can put it, I think more than 1,000 organizations over the past few years, be it funders, nonprofits, and intermediaries, to really understand the problem at hand and also mobilize all of us to drive action towards how can we then solve this issue. And these are the 5 principles that we have captured that essentially put together what are those approaches or practices that each of us need to adopt at a sector level so that we can create nonprofits that are stronger, that are more resilient. So as you can see on the screen, we really do encourage that, there are multi-year funder NGO partnerships. And I think all of you will agree with me that impact doesn't happen in the short term. It's really, you need to take a long-term lens if you want to really create that deep impact for the communities you serve. It's important that funders pay NGOs a fair share of the core costs, because it's not just programmatic costs that are helping you sustain and drive strong organization. It's really the day-to-day operations that you also do and the funds that you require for that. Investing in organizational development, and I'm sure there are a lot of stories here of organizations like yourselves who have been able to do that, and we'd love to hear maybe after the session. And lastly, building a resilient organization, because we understand a lot of nonprofits don't have reserves that last more than, say, 3 months. And COVID showed us how exacerbated that issue was. And something we've added to this is also taking a diversity, equity, and inclusion lens. And this is really for funders to understand how well they're supporting nonprofits who are not in metro cities, who are led by communities that are marginalized, and really help them anchor their work. So this is a little bit about our mission, and how we're trying to solve that is by taking a systematic approach. As I mentioned, the first few years went into really building the evidence on what the problem is. And now we're collectively bringing together funders, nonprofits, and intermediaries, because each of us play a very unique role in addressing this issue to drive action in a way that's more sustainable. So today's session is really focused on organizational development. That's one of the principles that we encourage the sector adopts. And I'd love to start with a story of this great nonprofit called Sneha. They're based in Mumbai. They work in terms of improving maternal and child health. And I think they've really embodied what we're also trying to encourage in terms of what OD is and why it's important and how to seek investment for it. So Sneha, over the past 13 years, as you can see, was able to grow its annual budget by 47 times. They were able to significantly improve their reach in terms of the constituents that they serve. And over and above that, they were able to innovate, able to identify opportunities for growth. So looking at how to improve existing programs, how to add more programs, really with the goal of ensuring that they're best serving the communities that they support. And all of this really was essentially also possible because they were able to move from a fragmented, sort of unstructured approach to OD, where it was more opportunistic, to actually taking a more comprehensive and holistic approach towards recognizing where they stand in terms of the key OD capabilities that an organization should have for the growth stage that they're at. What do they need to do to essentially strengthen these capabilities? And also identifying who are the champions and allies who are going to support them on this journey over time. So I won't go into the details, but as you can see on the screen, they identified multiple capabilities, and this was not to say that they did it all at once. It was really an approach it was really an approach to see which capabilities they prioritize at which stage of their strategic cycle, based on what is their operating model, what is their growth strategy, and then trying to leverage their funders to also communicate why OD is important, how it links to their programmatic goals, how it links to the overall organizational mission of creating impact, and trying to identify opportunities with them to at least get investments for these critical OD capabilities. So this is one example of how a structured approach to OD has helped this nonprofit really grow its mission, its impact. And I would love to now also invite one of the partners of the Grow Fund, Rubina Ji, who represents SAFA. SAFA is a nonprofit organization based in Hyderabad. They strive to essentially create socioeconomic empowerment of women through livelihood creation, through capability building, as well as skill development, while really retaining the cultural elements in which those women reside and the communities in which they reside. So, Rubina ji, would love to hear from you on how SAFA was able to engage on its OD journey. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Aditi. And good morning, salam, and namaskar to everybody over here. We've been talking the past 2 days on organizational development, strategy, going through this entire cycle and reiterating some learnings, probably also busting a few myths, which yesterday it was done very effectively. But this entire story of, OD has got me thinking, is organizational development ये होता कैसे है, कहाँ पे करें, उसके budgets कहाँ से निकालें. All these things have created some kind of a, over the past few years, it creates a bit of irritation in us when we are filling in, the budgets. It creates an irritation. How do we do this actually? But over the past few, couple of months, and especially after Grow, I've realized that it's more than irritation, it's creating a feeling of inequity and injustice, which is being delivered to us. All of us sitting over here, we are stellar organizations, we are doing great, we are so passionate about what we do, we are so committed, we try to get in approaches of the business world, we try to emulate them, that work is excellent, this is how we should be working. But how does it happen actually? Now, grow over the past 2 years for us, what has happened is when the moment we started on the baselines, for me, that was a wow moment. And I keep telling Vidya also over here, as we did the complete baseline, things popped up for us. Now, did we know about it? Okay, these are the areas where we need to develop, or did we sort of put them aside and go down like ostriches, thinking that no, it's there, but let's not look at it. Sweep it under the carpet. So for us also, it was the same. I'm sure for the rest of us also, it was the same. कि हाँ है problem HR में, finance में problem है, पर जाने दो, programmatic, programmatic. We keep moving towards it. But what we did was the baseline popped up few things for us, which were orange flags, red flags. This is what we have not been investing in it, and how do we go about it? So for us in the first quarter, what we did was we did an exercise called Reset Safa 2.0, and we did like a two-day thingy with the senior management in our office. We are a team of 125 people, and we got in all the important stakeholders into it, and even our board. And there was an accountability element which came in with the board also. And we said, let us look at, resetting the organization. What I would like to talk about over here is, yes, we did come across 4 or 5 areas which needed some kind of inputs, but I would be mainly talking about HR over here. So the evaluation of the entire HR that we had, how did we go about it? For us, we knew, yes, we have program staff, we have project staff, but we immediately hired a consultant on the job. We knew we did not have the bandwidth for it, and we were lacking in that area. And it was an honest look at yourself. It's like, you stand in front of the mirror and you say, hey, this is not working right. Hey, you got a spot over here. Hey, you got a big pimple out here. So something like that happened with us. And we said HR is a big problem. And also, yesterday we were talking, it's about the people also. The people are the most important in the organization. मतलब लोग हैं तो काम चलता है. लोग नहीं है तो कहाँ से काम चलेगा? So it is not us leaders over here who are running the entire show. It's the people behind it. And how are we going to do it? So when the consultant came in, we found that at the end of the first or the second month, I think, she said, your team is 35% underutilized. And that was a bit of a shocker for us. And I'm talking about it very transparently and openly over here, that 35% underutilization of resources. And she went down to the metrics to come out with that. So what did we do about it? And they were mostly community outreach workers. How are they traveling? Where do they reach? What kind of locations we are giving to them? So what we did was, we had our KRAs and KPIs in place, but we built a more robust form of KRAs and KPIs. And it was totally from the inputs of the consultant that we did that. Along with that, we also put in indicators for the performance of these individuals, and which are reviewed from starting from the second quarter onwards. We've been reviewing them regularly. So apart from the underutilization, what has happened with us is, we also realized that the community outreach workers was the biggest layer of our work, because being a purely grassroots level organization. So starting from, I think, the fourth quarter, we are dedicating 15% of their time every week for capacity building these organizations, because they are the feet on the ground. They are the foot soldiers that we have. So these are the couple of things that we have looked at, and which is optimizing the resources. And if there is a staff member who's not really well utilized, we are utilizing him across our umbrella projects, which are overarching all the other projects. So this has been going on. This has resulted in that person multitasking, learning new things also. So that curve of learning and development is also going on. Did we experience challenges? Yes, we have experienced a lot of challenges, because it is about behavioral and attitudinal change in the people. And we have gone about it. It's taken us time. It's been like nearly 1.5 years of solid work with the team members that we have put in, and now they're open for challenges. So today in the night, if we call up and say, hey, we need you over here, we know that those guys are going to be there and going to perform, not just going to be over there. We have also worked on getting the second line of leadership up. It is a work in progress. It's very nice, very fancy, it's a romanticized thing which we say second line of leadership, but it is reality. We guys need to be working on it, I feel. And just to ensure that, it's our passion, it's our child, it's our baby, the organization. And how do we ensure that it sustains, it moves forward with you or without you? So we worked very diligently on that. One line I would like to put in over here is the difference between a mob and an army is organization only. So we need to ensure that we have a good organization in place, and we need to ensure we have partners like what we have seen in the past 2 days who are willing to invest in organization development. Thank you.
Thanks, Safa. But sometimes when I look at funding practices, I feel we don't need an army, we actually need a mob. So, so sorry, not Edelgate, but there are a lot of crappy funding practices in India. So, with that, I think thanks, Rubina. Thanks for sharing your experience. Uh, I think we want to accelerate some part of this thing to come to the crux of what we want to talk about, which is when you have to raise money for organization development, how should you go about doing it? So, Aditi, if you could just take the next section pretty quickly.
No pressure. But I think just to lay out, when you're also looking at OD, there are some key questions that we've put down. First is for you to recognize why it's important. As I think Rubina ji very nicely put it, we tend to be so much in the midst of programs that we either dismiss OD or we take it in a very opportunistic manner, not really looking at our blind spots, our biases. And thus, that's where a very structured approach helps. But before that, I think it's important for us to recognize why it's important. I know there are stories here which will speak to that, but there's also global evidence that's emerging on how OD has been able to, help NGOs grow twice as faster. It's been able to help NGOs also serve many more constituents through their work. So really the key message here being that OD is not something you need to solely look at as another line of work that you need to do, but really recognize how it's so closely interlinked with how you're able to effectively deliver programs, how your staff feels motivated to work towards the mission, how your constituents have a better experience of, your work with them. And so it's really advancing your overall sort of goal of unlocking impact for the communities. And through our work, we've also put together certain insights on what then really is the problem. Why are we not investing in OD as a sector? Through interviews with both funders and nonprofits and surveys with about 400 nonprofits, 77 funders, we recognize that about only 18% of NGOs said they invested adequately in OD. And a lot of them ended up also mentioning that while they do want to make investments in key OD capabilities, they don't have the funding for that and they're unable to do that. Whereas when we spoke to the funders, what we heard is that only 23% of them thought that NGOs are able to accurately share their cost structures and OD needs. And they thought NGOs don't spend enough time even recognizing what OD needs they need to focus on. So there's clearly a gap. There's a dissonance between both stakeholders here. And I think what we need to collectively do is bridge that gap. As nonprofits, we need to understand what are those priority OD capabilities we need to focus on, how they are linked to that mission, and really tell that story to our funders in a very compelling manner so that we can seek adequate funding for that. I think I'll skip this, but just to quickly say, and what Rubina ji also mentioned, let biases not come in the way of your OD journey. A lot of times familiarity, recency bias, something your peers might have done, something that's really trending in the ecosystem, tend to be our focus areas, and we might skew our investments towards those areas, thinking that those are the real critical needs our organization need, but actually there might be something completely different that's going to enable your journey. So please, when you also look at your OD journey, do be mindful of some of the biases that might hinder that. And to this end, we've created an OD toolkit. It lays out essentially a whole assessment guide, which we've put together 13 capabilities that are critical to a nonprofit organization's growth and sustenance and effective delivery. We've brought the best of sector knowledge, put together in one ready reckoner. Each of these 13 capabilities are further broken down into sub-capabilities. And what this guide essentially helps you do is take a more holistic approach to mapping where your organization lies on each of these capabilities. And then through a step-by-step approach, which we have put together in our OD tool, it allows you to then identify what are the priorities for your stage of growth, for your strategic cycle that you need to sort of enhance and get investment for. But I think one thing I would really sort of highlight is your step, and that's why we call it step zero. It's a 4-step process, but it really starts with having that clarity on what is your strategic mission, what is your 5-year goal, where do you see your organization in those 5 years, what does it take for you to achieve that, and who are the champions and allies who will be helping you take those critical decisions on OD. Once you have that clarity is when you embark on the next 3 steps, which is really to identify critical priorities. It's to assess what are the resources, whether financial or non-financial, that you need to invest in the OD priorities. And lastly, continue to assess how then these investments are helping you build your organization. How is it really enabling you to be more effective in terms of program delivery? Continue to communicate that impact to your funders as you go along. And it's an iterative process. OD planning is not a one-off process that you do. As you grow, as your organization grows, your needs also evolve over time. So please keep coming back to where you've done your capability mapping. What are the new capabilities that come through, maybe in the next 3 years, 4 years, 5 years? And how do you continue taking advice from your mentors, allies, champions, whether they be your funders, they be your peer nonprofits, to really help you on this journey? So that's a quick snapshot of the tool. But I think really what we want to focus on today is, okay, great, I've done my OD planning. I know what I need to invest in. How do I get the funds for that? So I would love to invite Shashank to take you through the next session.
Okay. So one easiest way of getting this done is to tell your funders to invest in Grow. So, uh, uh, but in absence of that, and that's sometimes not easy, Nagma can vouch for how difficult it was to have Grow 1 come in. Like in OD need assessment, even for fundraising, being more structured, being more thoughtful help. And that's what the focus of this segment is going to be, on how can you be more thoughtful about it. It all starts with preparation. It all starts with researching your funders. You can look for non-financial support, you can look for financial support, but you need to know who you are going to for what. It could be in terms of a funder providing subject matter expertise. So there are funders like Fidelity Foundation who may be providing money for technology. There may be some other funders who provide capability for technology building. It could be in terms of financial support as well. Sorry, I'm really sorry for what's happening with the ticker right now. There are few things that we need to understand. Despite all what we say on this stage, raising money for OD is always going to be a challenge. There are very few funders who will give you money for non-programmatic expenses. But first thing is that people who know you, people who have a strong relationship with you, they are going to be more likely to give you money for it. So identifying where you have very strong relationships is the first step of raising money for OD. So look at, first is pursue partnership, actively invested in creating partnership with funders who are mission aligned. Understand how are your missions aligned, see who's an ally for you in that organization, which individual is your champion, invest in the success of your champion as well. provide them the right kind of information, provide them with the right kind of support so that they can play the role of champion very well. Have honest conversations, and all of this is part of how do you build that relationship, how do you uh, strengthen that relationship. When I look at Nagma and Atul, I don't look at them as funders while they are an anchor partners for Pay What It Takes initiative, but we don't look at them as funders. We look at them as partners. We go to Nagma, we go to Atul, and Nagma being Nagma is mostly very critical of us. So, which is good because it helps us improve. It helps us understand where we are going wrong, where are our blind spots. And that is coming from that mutual trust that we are both partners in that same journey of sector transformation. So create, like I use Pay What It Takes as an example of how can we create strong partnerships. I think being open, trusting the funders, and acknowledging the inputs that they provide to improve what you're doing is a step that as an NGO we can take to create that partnership and care about your funders' priorities as well. If you are not doing something but the funder is uh, running another program and you know another organization which can do really well with that, recommend NGOs, other NGOs. Say no if you can't do something. If you are not the best people to do something, tell the funder that maybe this is not our capability. All of these things create a stronger relationship on which you can have conversations. In our research, we have identified 3 kinds of funders. So this is the second thing that you need to keep in mind when you're trying to raise money from funders. You will encounter a lot of people who would be classified as program proponents. A lot of CSRs will say, okay, what percentage of money is going into the program? What percentage of money is going for the community? So these people will be the program proponents. On the other side of the spectrum are organization builders. These are people who understand why investing in NGOs and building institutions is important, and they're willing to put that kind of money in, uh, in organization development, in financial resilience. Aparna is sitting here, so the legacy Tata Trust, the OG of capacity building, institution building in India was Tata Trust amongst the Indian funders. Tata Trust has created so many lasting institutions, NGOs who after 20 years of that kind of support still remember that in 2005 we received this grant from Tata Trust and that led to a transformation journey. So that's the organization builder kind of model that some funders will have. Identify which of your funders are organization builders. Invest extra in cultivating that relationship. The majority of funders that we have found in our research are what we call the movable middle or adaptive funders. They may have policies which may seem very inflexible, but in truth, they have a lot of flexibility. It may be determined on the context. So if there's an emergency, they will be flexible, or it may be dependent on the strength of relationship. So once again, when you're trying to raise money, you need to identify which of your funders fall in adaptive funders or organization builders, and these are going to be the better probability targets for you to raise money for organization development. In terms of which OD capabilities you take to whom, if you're going to a program proponent, things like MEL, things like reporting on finances, those kind of capabilities which have a very strong linkage with program, you should pitch to the program proponents as well. What's the worst that will happen? They'll say no. If we will not pitch, they are anyway not going to give this money. So asking for money is something which is important. Having a conversation on importance of OD is very important. With adaptive funders, again, like based on the context, look at some OD capabilities that may be of interest of the funder and how they can help you. With organization builder, as I said, strengthen on your partnership, invest in that, make them true champions of your organization, and that should be your target. So if I break it down into a series of steps that an NGO should be taking, not sure if you have received some pre-reads or an exercise, but we'll share some templates that you can use to start with listing down all the funders who contribute more than 5% of your budget. Identifying who's your champion in those funders. Like, this is very important thing, but we are just breaking it down into very actionable steps so that it's easy to implement as well. So who's contributing more than 5% of your budget? Are they multi-year for you? Is the partnership being there for multi-year or not? Which has a potential to be a multi-year? Who are the champions in those funders? So this is the first step that you need to do to assess your funder portfolio. Evaluate the relationship. Who in your organization owns this relationship? Is it too concentrated? Is it only the founder? Can you diversify this? Can you strengthen it by giving it to someone else who can invest more time on it? What's the nature of your relationship? And what's the nature of their relationship with other NGOs? You have a great cohort here. A funder can be a program proponent for you, but an adaptive funder for me. And you will not come to know about this till you are having a conversation with me, because that's when you will get to know that they funded an OD capability for me. So having conversation amongst peers, understanding what's your relationship with the funder and what's their relationship with other NGOs that they fund, helps you evaluate what the relationship looks like, and then assess which OD capabilities they might be funding, what are they interested in, how do they fund. So all of this is homework that you need to do even before you approach the funder with your OD needs. So knowing your funder, then you can make that pitch of which aspect of your cost the funder will fund. Align your pitch with the end impact that you're trying to achieve. Some of the data that Aditi shared can be used to showcase that it's not a you-only problem. It's something which is endemic in the sector, and hence it's important to tackle that. Have a conversation with your champion before you make a formal pitch. Have conversations with them informally. Understand what's the appetite of the funder. Understand what kind of tweaks might be required for your pitch to be more suitable for the funder to fund. And then ensure that when you are going for a OD fundraise, you have the right collateral. As Aditi mentioned, most of the funders say that NGOs are not able to articulate the need well. They're not able to tell how much money is required and how will it be used. So the OD toolkit tries to tackle those problems, because we actually heard from funders that there were NGOs who would keep asking for OD money. And in one case, the funder said, I said, okay, we'll allocate 10 lakh rupee for OD. How are you going to use it? And the NGO did not have an answer. Now that's a dangerous situation, because the funder loses confidence in you. So having all of that preparation done beforehand, and when you are approaching to the funder, having that kind of idea to say, this is why I need money, this is what I need to do in the next 3 years to build a stronger organization which will deliver better impact. Having that kind of plan really helps, and that's what we are encouraging all of you to do. So I think this is the end of our presentation. One thing I just wanted to share were, there are quite a few collaterals, there are quite a few information that's available on Richspan website that can be used. There's a tip sheet for fundraising pitches. There's an directory of OD service providers that has been created. So if you're looking at understanding how much money would be required to raise money for a particular, for strengthening a particular capability, you can have conversations with experts who work in that field, understand how much money do they require to deliver some projects. Robina talked about an HR consultant. Having a conversation beforehand to understand what the cost of that consultant would be, when you are trying to raise money for it would be useful. So that's that. I would stop here, and I think that leaves us with 15 minutes for Q&A. And if you want, I can go back to the slides, or if you want, I can just answer with whatever I can share. Open for conversation. Otherwise, I'll cold call. Yes, sir.
We go to many of our funders, one of the first things they ask us is sustainability.
Yes.
Right? So I want to understand from a funding perspective, what do you mean by sustainability? Now, when you work with the poorest or the most marginalized
Yeah.
in the least privileged, how do you expect this financial sustainability to come? Many funders struggle with that point when they realize that, oh, you're not going to draw enough money to sustain your operations. So could you just, this is related to OD because even before you can reach here,
Yes.
this is where you're cut off.
So the question is, a lot of funders, when you're trying to raise money, will say, but what's your sustainability plan? How will you make this change, this impact sustainable? I think the first question to ask for a funder is, what do they mean by sustainability? Sometimes what the funders mean by sustainability is they have their policy of saying, we will not support an organization for more than 5 years. In which case, you may have to say, okay, like as an NGO, and especially when you're working with the most marginalized, assuming that the community will be able to bear the cost, or the community will be able to take care of taking the change forward without an NGO's intervention within a short period of 3 to 5 years, is pipe dream in my opinion. There are a lot of funders who understand that change takes 10 years, 15 years, or even more. And they may be looking at sustainability from the perspective of saying, I can only support you for 3 years, what after that? In which case, pivot the conversation on saying, if that's your limitation, then probably 1.5 years before your funding ends, we need to look at alternate funders for this program. And which means I need to put some time and capacity allocation on that side. So is it possible for you to either increase the funding in the last 1.5 years, or give me some more allocation so that I have the bandwidth to go out and look for funders so that this program sustainability is not affected? It's an ideal answer. Just one thing, majority of times, you will encounter funders who believe that you do an intervention for a year or 2 years and you will be able to make change sustainable. Unfortunately, I think that's the responsibility for Atul and Nagma, because that level of understanding can only come from peer experience share. An NGO keep talking about the fact that change takes time is ineffective, but when Nagma will talk about how some of the relationships have been there for 18 years or even more, and some of your NGO relationships, 9, sorry. Yeah, we'll argue about that later. But yeah, so sharing that kind of experience with other funders is what will help them evolve. Sorry, there were a couple of hands. Sorry, ma'am, please.
नमस्कार, गुड मॉर्निंग। मेरा नाम फरजाना बेगम है। मैं राहत से हूँ। बिहार और बंगाल दोनों में क्षेत्र में काम करते हैं। तो हम लोग ग्रास रूट ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस हैं, तो हम लोगों को बहुत बार फंडिंग के बारे में पता नहीं चल पाता है कि उस फंडिंग को कैसे हम उनसे बात कर सकें। कुछ बात हम लोग अगर मान लें कि गूगल पे देखते हैं या उनको सर्च करने की कोशिश करते हैं, तो उनको अगर हम लोग मैसेज करते हैं, मेल लिखते हैं, तो कई बार है कि जवाब नहीं आता। अगर नहीं है, हो सकता है उनका क्षेत्र बिहार में नहीं है, बंगाल में नहीं है, ऐसे उनकी जो मुश्किलात हैं उनके साथ होगी, तो उनका जवाब नहीं आ पाता, जिससे लगता है कि शायद नहीं देखे होंगे, इतने मेल्स आके गिरते होंगे, हम लोग वो भी समझ सकते हैं, हमारे जैसे कितनी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन। एक तो ये था, और दूसरा चीज़ था कि हम कैसे उनको सर्च और कोई आसान तरीका बताएं, क्योंकि ये एक मंच है कि जिससे हम अपनी कामों को उनको बता सकें। देखिए बहुत सारी चीज़ है, फेसबुक है, वेबसाइट है, वगैरह वगैरह, बहुत सारी चीज़ें हैं जो हर ऑर्गेनाइजेशन ने, हम लोगों ने भी बना रखी है, लेकिन उसके बावजूद भी इतनी ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस मदद के लिए है, बहुत सारी फंडिंग्स, लेकिन हम उन तक शायद नहीं पहुंच पा रहे हैं। तो एक तो हम लोग को मदद की ज़रूरत है, हम लोग ग्रास रूट ऑर्गेनाइजेशन की, उसमें थोड़ा हेल्प कैसे हम वहाँ जा सके। दूसरा चीज़ है कि जैसे कोलैबोरेशन की बात जो की है, इतने संस्थाओं को यहाँ पे लाए और हम लोग से को देखने का अपॉर्चुनिटी मिला। हम लोग अलग अलग प्रांतों से आए हैं, कैसे हम लोग जुड़ सकते हैं, उसके लिए एक आसान रास्ता होना चाहिए, और वो एक रिक्वेस्ट
मैम,
था।
आप एनजीओ सेक्टर में काम कर रही हैं तो आसान शब्द आपके मुंह से अच्छा नहीं लगता। क्योंकि मतलब आप जिसने भी एनजीओ चूज किया है उसने ऑलरेडी एक मुश्किल प्रॉब्लम को सॉल्व करने के लिए एक कठिन राह चुन ली है। एंड अनफॉर्चुनेटली आई डोंट हैव एन आंसर। मेरे पास कोई इस चीज़ का जवाब नहीं है कि आसान तरीका क्या हो सकता है। एक जो सजेशन मेरा होगा वो ये होगा कि जब आप अपने लीडरशिप के टाइम एलोकेशन की बात करते हैं, प्लीज़ उस टाइम एलोकेशन में थोड़ा सा टाइम कहीं पर भी कॉन्फ्रेंसेस हो रही हैं उनको अटेंड करने के लिए रखिए। थोड़ा सा पैसा उस टाइप की ट्रैवल के लिए रखिए। आप सही कह रहे हैं कि जब हम ईमेल भेजते हैं किसी को तो बहुत बार जवाब नहीं आता, लेकिन जब आप प्रत्यक्ष में बात करेंगे किसी से, जो आपका पैशन है, जो आपका जुनून है, वो बहुत आसानी से फंडर को समझ में आता है। ऐसा नहीं है कि फंडर नहीं चाहते कि उन्हें एनजीओज मिले, पर फंडर ऑर्गेनाइजेशन भी बहुत ही लिमिटेड कैपेसिटी पर होती हैं, बहुत अधिकतर जगह बहुत कम लोग होते हैं। तो एबिलिटी टू मतलब टू एक्टिवली स्काउट, खुद जाके ढूंढना बहुत मुश्किल हो जाता है। और सच्चाई है कि हज़ारों एनजीओ हैं जो अच्छा काम कर रही हैं, तो एक और एनजीओ ढूंढने के लिए मैं कितना एफर्ट लगा पाऊँ वो बहुत मुश्किल है। बहुत कम लोग ऐसे होंगे जो कि इतना कोहेरेंटली सोचेंगे कि सेक्टर में सेक्टर में भेदभाव है एक तरीके का। ये हमारी रिसर्च से भी आया था कि जो एनजीओज भारत के 8 प्रमुख शहरों में नहीं है वो ज़्यादा सफ़र करती हैं। हिंदी वाला सफ़र।
जी सर।
तो मतलब उनके लिए पैसा रेस करना मुश्किल है, उनके लिए ओडी के लिए पैसा रेस करना ज़्यादा मुश्किल है। तो इसलिए मेरा एक जो अनुरोध होगा आप सब एनजीओ से, वो ये है कि जब आप अपना बजट बना रहे हैं तो ये समझें कि ये फंडर रिलेशनशिप कल्टीवेट करना, ये फंडर्स की लाइक फंडर्स के साथ जुड़, मतलब लाइक हाउ डू यू कनेक्ट, हाउ डू यू लाइक इवन अपनी एनजीओ के बारे में फंडर्स को बता पाना एक बड़ी रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी है। आप वेबसाइट बना लेंगे, पर अगर मैं आपकी वेबसाइट नहीं ढूंढ रहा हूँ, अगर मैंने राहत नहीं डाला,
जी सर।
वो कभी आएगी ही नहीं मेरे सर्च में। तो इसलिए ये कॉन्फ्रेंसेस इम्पॉर्टेंट हैं। यहाँ पर आप जाएं तो उससे पहले थोड़ा सा होमवर्क करके जाएं, देखें कि कौन से फंडर आ रहे हैं, उनसे उनका इंटरेस्ट समझ कर जाएं। बात अपनी एनजीओ के बारे में ना करके उनके इंटरेस्ट की करें, और उसके बाद बताएं कि कैसे वो उनका जो इंटरेस्ट है वो आपके काम से भी अलाइंड है। क्योंकि आप देखेंगे कि इन सारी कॉन्फ्रेंसेस में भी मतलब जैसे ये हरा पट्टा है, तो वो क्लियरली पता चल रहा है कि भाई ये अलग टाइप का जंतु है। No, not this. not this conference, but I have been in conferences where मतलब बहुत clearly जो lanyard होता है वो कहता है speaker. तो उसकी वजह से बहुत सारे लोग सिर्फ वो देखकर ही, उन्हें ये नहीं पता कि आप कौन हो, उन्हें ये नहीं पता आप क्या करते हो, आप स्पीकर हो तो आप इम्पोर्टेंट हो, तो मेरे को आपसे बात कर दिया. नहीं नहीं.
No, no, I'm canceling this answer. No. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry to intrude. But see, as okay, how do I frame this? कि हम funds, okay, हम it'll give और मैं we are in a position जहाँ पर हमको दो type की privileges और दो type की pain points हैं. Okay, हमको हम एक grant maker हैं. तो उसका प्रिविलेज ये है कि हम आप जैसे बहुत सारी संस्थाओं के साथ में काम कर पाते हैं और क्योंकि एडल गिव में क्या है 30 लोग हैं, हमारी ना इतनी काबिलियत है ना हमारा इतना रीच है कि हम कम्युनिटीज़ तक पहुंच पाए. ओके, तो हमारा प्रिविलेज ये है कि हमको ग्रांट हम दे सकते हैं. हमारी रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी ये है कि इसके लिए प्रोसेस सही होना चाहिए, ऐसा प्रोसेस होना चाहिए जो एक्सेस दे पाए. That is our job. All right, so as a grant maker, that's the privilege. Now the fact is that the responsibility that comes with it or the burden that comes with it is the money has to be raised. Okay, we have limited capital. If we want to run a grow, for example, we have to raise the capital. Right, so this is why this context, because what I'm going to say comes from that understanding. Fundraising is tough. Okay, fundraising is tough whether you raise money for a startup business or whether you raise money for social good. That we have to understand. Social good में extra problem ये है कि there is no return, so it becomes a power dynamic. We also need to understand that because of the inherent nature of what resources and money bring, power structure है and there is a tilt. And your entire work and my entire work also rests in the way we are able to address this power structure and break this power structure. Okay, so this is the second piece of context that we have to remember. All questions of sustainability and access and all of that वो तभी address होंगे जब हमको realize हो कि ये power structure break करना है और इसका एक process होता है. मतलब आप एक conference में जाके वहाँ से पैसा नहीं raise कर सकते, मैं भी नहीं raise कर सकती. Okay, कोई नहीं raise कर सकता because conference में क्या होता है, आप एक दूसरे से मिलते हो, आप एक network. तो what Shashank said very well before this is relationship building. So what happens at conferences is you get time over tea, over these conversations to touch base with each other and make that first human connect, that we come with some body of work that we would want to share. That is how this works. And then the whole journey of keeping in touch. What you presented is very apt. Then you show your work. Then you be in touch. You be in touch with more than one person if you can possible. You try to share the impact. But one thing I want to tell you that this is how it works, whether we are a small organization or a large organization, whether we are a business or whether we are, if I want to start a soap factory also, the process is this. That I will go out and reach out to 100 funders and 2 will fund me. I can tell you from Adel Gives perspective, we meet 100 people and 2 fund us. This is important to tell you because we are all having the same return. The difference is the access that you have and the access that someone else has and the access that I have. So the whole journey is how to get access into better rooms. Okay, and that's how these conferences happen. You meet better people, you join better people. Then you meet better people, you join. It's all about people. I'm going to stop lecturing on this, but I hope this sets the context. Yes, living far away from Bombay, Delhi, Bangalore makes it tougher. Language barriers make it tougher. The fact that important people don't know us makes it tougher. ये reality है. But ये भी है कि smart searches. कौन सी conference में जाएं, कौन सी में ना जाएं. किन से बात करें, किन से ना बात करें. हमको अगर किसी ने already पैसा दिया है, क्या हम उसको request कर सकते हैं कि हमको एक और funder से मिला दो? You know, क्या हमने, and Safa did a beautiful thing last month and Atul was part of it. I think Rubina, you should also speak about that later. They called all their funders in one room at one point and said, ये हमें 2 साल करना है. Yeah, I mean, I think maybe more what we did, and I may get the duration wrong. all your funders sitting together. How beautiful is that? ये इम्पोर्ट ताकि फंडर भी हमको प्रोजेक्ट से आगे देखे. Okay, so I'm just putting this in context that access और reach और search को break करने के तरीके बहुत हैं और conference is one lever. Okay.
I agree. And thanks, Nagma. Uh, we'll take two more questions only. So, and then we are around if, please.
Hi Shashank, my name is Anusuya. I'm from Jagriti Enterprise Center, Purvanchal. We work for rural entrepreneurship development. So actually we are in the process of creating this OD plan and a growth plan and all of it. So my question is that like Aditi mentioned that it's an iterative process. So, what is the ideal, duration of the iteration? So, when should we do the next one if we're doing one now? Because there are a lot of uncertain things which we come across, and then we don't know how to go ahead. So, when should the next iteration be ideal?
So typically we suggest taking a 3-year horizon for this kind of planning because it will be aligned to what your strategy is. But again, the right answer for this is it depends, because sometimes external context may change, something else may change, or some new like area of development may emerge that you have not considered. So it's a very judgmental call on whether you need to do this whole exercise again, or do you need to take stock of the situation and see whether what you had planned earlier is still holding good or not. But typically, I would say OD takes time to show results, and OD takes time to even get implemented. So doing this on an annual basis, I won't recommend, because like एक साल में तो आप पैसा रेज करेंगे, फिर जो भी आप काम कर रहे हैं वो 1-1.5 साल उसको इम्प्लीमेंट करने में लगेगा, फिर उसके बेनिफिट्स आने शुरू होंगे. So that's my answer, that please take at least a 3-year horizon, and Vijaya can probably add more on.
By and large, I think a 3-year horizon is good. Thank you. I do know that many times there is also a school of thought of maybe we should look at it 5 years. You have a 5-year plan. I think given the sort of external changes which come about, but you all also go through an annual exercise every year. I think one of the things that grow, we've also consciously asked you to include is a sort of a risk and vulnerability assessments for yourself. Big words, but you can actually break it down. It's good to therefore to start sort of looking at it annually, and also having some a sort of the OKRs, your organization key results, and are we moving along those? So I think that should be fine.
Okay, sorry. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, good morning. Thank you. It's a very interesting topic, and it's nice that we address this because, of course, as NGOs, sometimes we get stuck on the day-to-day operations and we don't get time to think about how to structure and organize ourselves. And of course, it's very pertinent to try to get funds to do OD work. The lady who spoke with you earlier from, I think, Gujarat, said she had a really nice experience with some HR consultant, which really helped her to get a good picture of, where they were standing. Is there a list or is there a resource where we can find which are the consultants, that we can trust, that we can, that have experience with grassroots organization, that because there's a whole market out there, and, we get funds. Usually they're very expensive also, or they can be very expensive. So is there a certification or some kind of list of proper consultants, agencies that can help us in these processes?
So no certification per se, but one of the things that Pay What It Takes did last year, was to create a list of 100 OD experts or like service providers. One thing that we put out very clearly was we need 2 NGO references. We cannot judge the quality of someone's work, but what we have put out in public domain is who are the 2 NGOs that they consider as referenceable clients, so that looking at the NGO, you can understand whether they are very large NGOs or very small NGOs, are they your peers? And you can possibly talk to them and have a sense of how good the quality was, what were the challenges, what were the good things about a consultant. But it is a big information asymmetry that exists in the sector, which is again, I think, peer connections or talking to your funders is the other way of solving this.
Where is that list you're talking about?
We'll share the links with the Grow team, and they can circulate that to all of you. Sorry, the last question, because I think we are over time. So can I connect after the, like, sorry, you can, but if you think you have you can take the question. I'm just asking the gentleman if we can connect offline.
Off the bat, I want to thank you because we were a part of your true cost computation workshop in Bombay, and it's been very helpful. So thank you. But I think as a nonprofit, sometimes we all get stuck in the percentage and number game. And even when it comes to, and we are, while we're moving to the computations you're talking about, it's a transition. And even with OD, what we are seeing is, because we do understand that while CB and OD have been funded, we have to learn to ask our donors for those funds, and that's the reality. Is there a guide on the percentage game? Because CSR still plays the percentage game, particularly for, I want to say, mid to small size nonprofits. Even if we align out what we would like to do, ideally with OD, there will be a certain guideline, or maybe there is a certain guideline on what is acceptable as a spend on OD in a particular year or for a particular size or against a particular programmatic cost. Any kind of guidelines on that?
The answer is no. There are no percentage guidelines that can be given, and also because it may be very contextual. For a small organization, investing 10 lakh on OD may be, let's say, 10% of overall budget. For a Pradhan, it will be a minuscule percentage. So hence, it's not realistic to put OD needs. Yeah, sorry, you want to come in, but that's our point of view, and I think it is tough. Yeah. So.
I think one of the sort of experiences that we've had when it, especially CBOD, is just in the definition of it, right? There's no clear distinction which says what is capacity building and what is OD. My submission is that even before you go into the cost, and the other gentleman also spoke, is there an optimal cost service providers that are available? And this is something that we're also constantly trying to look at it. The first thing is to sort of go from a bottom-up approach to look at. Let's just take tech. You don't need to invest in to build tech. You start with looking at what point of time do I need to move away from a Google Data Studio into something which allows me to customize a SaaS platform that's available. I think that's how you need to go and build it up from there, man. Because like Microsoft Excel is the Swiss Army knife, and it can actually compute huge data sets. And the kind of data insights that we're bringing out while you're trying to build data-driven approaches to program measurement or otherwise do not really require you to have sophisticated tech. What you need is a good data collection tool, which Google even Sheets can provide. If not, are there other versions? I'm not here to promote tech, but my point, the limited point I want to make is Do not go first with the percentage cost. Start looking at what are the things that we can leverage optimally before we start looking at what is the kind of budgeting requirement we need to put in. That's where I would leave it.
Okay, I'll stop here. Yeah, sorry. Please.
Thank you, Shashank. I just wanted to reflect a little briefly about, while we're focusing on OD and organizational development, I think it's important to think that from a sectoral perspective, what we want to achieve is institutional strengthening. And organizational development is one tool, just like our program design and building is one tool. OD is in the beginning and the end of institutional strengthening. There is a larger purpose to why we do OD, so that we can improve our program delivery. And that means that as an institution, you're stronger. And I remember yesterday someone was saying that, institutions are there so that you have longevity and durability, and something that you can depend on, during the hard times. So the different ways in which you can measure institutional durability. I think one of the measures that GROW was using was, how long can you continue operating if you had no funding? That's one way of looking at, how strong you are institutionally. And another way of thinking about it is, do you have a corpus? Do you have an endowment? And, there are different funders across the world who have thought about this over a period of time. I think Bridgespan would have looked at the BUILD program that Ford did. That call has to be taken jointly between the funder and the donor. Your question is, what is that percentage? What is that magic number, right? There is no magic number for sure, but I think if you actually decide that this is an institutional strengthening journey and not just an organizational development journey, it'll shift how you think about the percentage, right? So then you start thinking about the institutional strengthening within the context of what you need to achieve programmatically. Because what happens otherwise is you think about OD as a standalone thing that you need to do, because you need a better communications team, you need to have a better fundraising team, and then these become standalone things that you're working on. And so I'll just give you an example of how the previous funding organization I worked for thought about it, okay? And this is by no means to say that this is the perfect formula, but this is one example of how a funder thought about it. And then, of course, there are developmental evaluations that say that it works for some organizations and it doesn't. So if you could look at your operating budget for a year, right, and say that I'll add 30% to it, and I'm going to use that to strengthen my institution. So that's how Ford thought about it, and say that can be a rule of thumb. That doesn't mean that every organization got that, but that became a starting point to have a conversation. And so I think that's the way that you can I think each organization should think about what would be their sweet spot, and then go to the donor with it so that you actually have a framework from which you can begin a negotiation and a conversation about, this is what institutional strengthening means to me, this is how OD fits into that journey, and this is what the percentage makes sense for me as an organization. And I think that can actually help shift the responsibility away from the donor and also away from the grantee organization, and find that sweet spot. That's the way that I have always been thinking about it. Thank you.
Thanks, Aparna. So if there are any further questions, I can take them offline. We'll also share our email addresses. If you have further feedback, any more questions, please do share. And we'll share the presentation to be circulated with all the people in the room as well.
Thank you, Shashank. Thank you.